You never can truly predict what Sakurai will do next. After all the talk after E3 wondering what'll happen now and how Smash is going to top Banjo and Kazooie and all the wildest names that got dropped in speculation, a scarce few people had Terry Bogard on their radars. Where most expected the stakes to keep rising to maintain people's interest, Sakurai just took things in a different direction instead. Hey, you don't always have to build on top of what you already have. Building adjacent can be good too. And his reveal was still a surprise that next to no one saw coming, is what I would have said if Nintendo hadn't slipped up a few days prior and given away that a character from SNK was coming. Whoops. But with Terry arriving sometime in November, his fans and those curious about him are left wondering, how's he gonna fight? What can we expect from the third iconic fighting game character to join the roster? And how could his traits and abilities from both the Fatal Fury and King of Fighters series be translated in a way that feels true to who he is and different from his predecessors? With very little actual gameplay to analyze, instead we'll be looking at his various appearances to try and predict what Sakurai might have in mind for Southtown's hero. So, let's take a look. Our first look at Terry's appearance in Smash is a shiny HD take on his classic design, as you'd come to expect. Even his default idle animation is a more fluid version of the one he's had for a good 25 years. While we saw nothing regarding his alternate colors, I think the three he's had since King of Fighters 98 is a pretty safe bet. Beyond those, there are options like palettes inspired by other SNK characters, something King of Fighters is no stranger to in the past, or even full retextures for some flashier costumes like in King of Fighters Maximum Impact 2. Or a full-on alternate design based on his older look from the Fatal Fury sequel spin-off, Garou Mark of the Wolves. Feel like this one's got a pretty legit shot at showing up, considering how it keeps appearing as an alt form in other games. We heard a few clips of his Japanese voice work in the teaser, which raises the question, will he get an English voice actor? Well, while it's been done a couple times before, he's not exactly known for it. And because of that, I got a feeling he'll only have one voice actor no matter what version of Ultimate you're playing. Sure, having the guy from an XB of Miami running around speaking English with a thick Japanese accent is weird, but I suppose that's just part of his charm. For our special mechanics go, oh boy, this'll be complicated. See, they might or might not have Terry copy some of the mechanics used by Ryu and Ken. Their command inputs, their tilts having both light and heavy variants based on whether you tap or hold A, their super rigid jumps just like in traditional fighters, that thing where they automatically turn to always face their opponent in 1v1 matches, all stuff that's meant to make them feel like they walked straight out of the games they call home. I don't know if Terry will use some or all of these. I can see how Sakurai might want to include them to make him feel especially true to his source material like with most guest fighters, but I could also see wanting to not stick most of them on so he feels more distinct and unique compared to Ryu and Ken and feels more like an alternate take on the fighting game style. I know, not a good look for a quote-quote prediction to be so vague, but since there's merit to both, it's got like a 50-50 chance of going either way, and I want to acknowledge both possibilities. However, there is one other mechanic Terry might end up with, something that helped him stand out next to his counterparts. The Max Meter is a recurring part of the King of Fighters games, a temporary enhanced state that grants your fighter passive damage buffs and all kinds of other things that vary with each entry. I could definitely see Terry having something like this in Smash, with a meter that builds as he deals and takes damage. The trick would be having Max Mode do something distinct compared to Cloud's Limit or Joker's Persona once it's active. Maybe something like a passive boost to his damage output when Max Mode is active, combined with the ability to cancel certain attacks into other attacks or even his specials while in Max Mode like in King of Fighters 02, with more cancelable attacks and more freeform combos than the cancels Ryu and Ken have, in exchange for burning some meter to do so and having the enhanced state end sooner. While it's activated on command in his games, I figure in Smash, Terry would go into Max Mode automatically once the meter is filled to keep it in line with Limit and Arsene. Bear in mind, this is just one possible interpretation of how the Max Meter can be translated into Smash. We've seen meter mechanics do various things in Fatal Fury and King of Fighters, like enhanced versions of certain moves or burning some meter to instantly break out a shield stun with a roll or blowback attack, and those are also worth considering. By no means do I think this interpretation I've chosen will happen for sure, so best to keep our options open. But now, let's talk about Terry's moveset. Because despite appearing in so many games over the years, the majority of his basic attacks have stayed pretty consistent. This makes it easier than you'd expect to guess which he'll use in his Smash moveset, though there are definitely still some tough decisions to make. His jab combo in particular could take a couple different forms, to where I think they might give him 2 jabs based on whether there's an opponent right up in his face or not. At short range, he'd start with his close light punch from King of Fighters 98, then his close light kick from the same game. When not close up, he'd start with his far light punch, then his far heavy punch, then finish with his far heavy kick. Much like how traditional fighters often have your moves change based on proximity to your opponent, and like how Ryu and Ken have a few such moves in Smash themselves, giving Terry's jab proximity-based variance allows him to have a quick pressure breaker or a solid self-contained combo with the same input based on what's needed more at the moment. I could see Terry having a couple other proximity-based moves, but this is the only A move I did it for with this prediction, both for simplicity's sake and so I didn't get in over my head with this. My experience with traditional fighting games is limited. Moving on, Terry's forward tilt could use his far light kick for a nice spacing tool that'd come out pretty fast if they kept the animation true to the source material. The downside is it probably wouldn't combo into anything normally, though maybe it'd cancel into some stuff during max mode. Pulling from a different game, this close heavy kick from Garo would work perfectly as Terry's up tilt. A very distinct animation compared to Ryu's infamous elbow. It'd have a good hitbox, but once again be more for spacing than comboing. For his down tilt, we'll take this crouching heavy kick. Like with the other tilt attacks, it's got reach on it to make it good at exchanging blows with opponents and winning neutral, but it'd be slow to come out by tilt standards and you wouldn't be able to follow it up unless you could cancel it, and we don't know if that'll be a thing. For Terry's dash attack, we'll pull from his long list of specials from his games for the first time and work in his power charge technique. This hard-hitting shoulder tackle would have some wind-up to it, but if it hits, it'll have some nice damage and knockback. It'll be good for punishes, ending stocks, covering landings, or even just catching your opponent off guard. Narrowing down what to do for Terry's forward smash took a while, but I think we'll see his crack shoot special used here. The forward motion on this jumping flip kick would cover a wide range, close small gaps to whiff punish bad spacing, reach high enough to pressure platforms, and even go over low attacks. The downside is it'd be very unsafe on shield, and would probably also have a fair amount of startup just to keep his playstyle from revolving around it. Back to something slightly more conventional, this particular command normal is a shoo-in for Terry's up smash. A rising uppercut square to the jaw of anyone trying to jump in on you, it's more or less the same as Ryu's and Ken's up smashes and would have similar uses. And now back to pulling from specials because Round Wave is an easy fit for Terry's down smash. Hitting around and in front of him for high damage, I could even see Smash altering the animation of the wave itself to go higher and justify a bigger hitbox. But I could also see it keeping the part where it doesn't hit behind him very well. We have fewer options to work with for aerials, but I think we can manage. Terry's neutral air would likely be this mid-air light punch, a karate chop of all things. It'd probably be great at extending combos since it's such a quick move, as well as starting combos if used while falling or jumping in. But since the hitbox is awkwardly placed and only really covers in front of him, it wouldn't have much use as a defensive combo breaker. Strictly for offense, this one. Terry's aerial light kick is a likely choice for his forward air. Another fairly fast spacing tool, it might be kinda like a faster but weaker version of Ryu's forward air. Might even give it a late hit if they think that makes sense. Though since Terry has his leg higher up during the kick than Ryu does for his, it might have some trouble hitting shorter characters in low crouches. Then that kick's heavy counterpart might be used for Terry's back air. He turns around partway during the animation already. Harder hitting but slower and laggier than the light kick, it'd be strong enough to net KOs and might even have a late hit that lingers for a while. It just makes sure you aren't left too vulnerable if you miss. Finding a workable up air wasn't easy, but I could see this move from King of Fighters 02 being used for it, a variant on his mid-air heavy kick used if you're jumping straight up. Reaching above and in front of him, it'd take some getting used to so you can hit it consistently, but it'd have a pretty nice hitbox at least. Guess fighting game characters and awkward up airs go hand in hand. Speaking of which, this mid-air heavy punch might look familiar, and it's a likely candidate for Terry's down air. Similar to Ryu's and Ken's versions, this angled punch comes out fast and would likely spike, but it'd have an awkward hitbox with that much range on it. If Terry's actual aerials end up anything like these predictions, he'll have to be careful about what he throws out when in the air because they're all either high commitment or have unusually placed hitboxes. Terry's grab game would require some improvising by the Smash team, as he doesn't have much to work with. There's his forward throw, this 1-2 punch that doesn't even look like a throw at first glance, but it is, and his back throw, where he flings his opponent over his shoulder. Could see the forward throw doing some good damage, and the back throw will probably deal substantial knockback. But the source material is lacking in up or down throw options. And while there are a few directions the Smash team could go with them, make up new moves entirely, base them loosely on regular attacks like with Ryu and Ken, etc., I'm not really sure which they'll go with, so best to keep our options open there. Like with the rest of his moveset, Terry's specials have a lot of source material to work with. The challenge is more in figuring out which of them will get used and where. Though it's not too difficult for his neutral special, as we saw Power Wave in action in the teaser, and it makes the most sense at neutral by far. While it serves a Hadoken-like role as a simple projectile for poking at opponents from a distance and keeping them honest, it's different from your typical fireball in that it's not a fireball. This energy shockwave looks to be generously big and decently fast moving in the teaser, and by its very nature of being a grounded hitbox, characters with low crouches won't be able to duck under it, though it might be easier to jump over in exchange. Depends on how well the actual hitboxes match the animation, as there are a few examples of attacks with worse range than their animation suggests. If an EX version of Power Wave exists, I could see it being even faster and deal multiple hits. Interestingly, it seems like the two Power Waves thrown in the teaser had slightly different speeds. This implies there's a way to enhance the move slightly somehow. Maybe there's a command input hidden in there, or maybe it's like Ryu's and Ken's fireballs and acts differently depending on if you tap or hold it. Also, the whole travels along the ground thing raises a question. What happens if Terry's in the air? Well, my theory right now is it just won't come out at all. We've had past examples of specials that only work when grounded, like Peach's turnip pull or DK's hand slap prior to Smash 4, so it's not out of the question. Having an important move like this be unavailable when in the air would give Terry a further focus on grounded combat. The other move we saw in the teaser, Burn Knuckle, slots right in as Terry's side special. This charging punch is tailor-made for closing gaps and punishing your opponent for throwing something out that left them open. We even saw it whiff punish Mars Shield Breaker here, which goes to show how useful it'll be for that. But I think there's more to Burn Knuckle than meets the eye. I'm betting it'll have some anti-projectile properties that'll let Terry zone break with it. Something like a trample effect on his fist as he's moving that clank out weaker projectiles on contact and keep going. Think kinda like how Ganondorf can use Wizard's Foot to get in at mid-range. This would give Terry a deceptively easy time getting in against projectile walls for a hand-to-hand fighter. Another thing that differentiate him further from Ryu and Ken. Just be careful with it. Even if it lets you punch right through projectiles, it looks to be pretty unsafe if it doesn't hit, and its high-up hitbox will be easy for low crouches to go under and punish. If an EX version exists, it'd probably go further, faster, and hit harder. Or maybe that version would be the one with trample properties. We're flying blind the rest of the way, and Terry has a couple options for his up special, but the one I think we'll see is Rising Tackle, a fast, multi-hit maneuver that's basically Terry's answer to Shoryuken. Well, one of them. It'd be very effective as an out-of-shield punish with its short startup and sheer number of hitboxes, though I doubt it'd be as much of a kill threat as the OG Shoryuken is. Think something more like Mario's Super Jump Punch. Then again, Terry will have at least a few good options for ending stocks, so not being able to with this move wouldn't hurt him too much. As a recovery move though, Rising Tackle wouldn't be the greatest. Fortunately, Terry also has Burn Knuckle as an alternative, and so recovering with him would involve mixing up which moves you use to get the distance you need and maneuver around or plow through edgeguard attempts. If an EX version of Rising Tackle exists though, I'd imagine it'd go higher and be better for recovering, along with dealing more damage. Took me a lot of deliberation to decide what Terry might end up with for his down special, but now I think the most likely pick is Power Dunk. The other pseudo-Shoryuken attack in his games, it starts with a rising kick that alley-oops targets upward to get punched back down. I figure this move will show up somehow since it's pretty iconic and references Terry's love of basketball, and since the emphasis is on the dunk more than the rising part, I think it'd work well as a down special if it gets adapted a little. Power Dunk could serve a few different purposes depending on the properties of the initial kick, if it's there at all, how high Terry rises at the start, how long the dunk part lasts, and how and where he's vulnerable during the move. Could be anything from a simple punish, an out-of-shield option, another zone-breaking tool that lets him go up and over attacks at mid-range, or just a nice big hard-read call-out. I'd imagine the punch would spike if you sweet spot it since that's what it does in the original games, but they'd have to be careful about its strength and consistency so he wouldn't be able to use it near the ledge to scoop people up and dunk them into oblivion at unfairly low percents. If an EX version exists, I could see them pulling elements from his Star Dunk Volcano Super in King of Fighters 14, as in the 14th game, not 2014, long story. The dunk part could drag people down ether style into a big explosion once you hit the ground. Finally, there are several choices for Terry's final smash, but I think we'll see something like this. Like with Ryu and Ken, he'll have two options for a finisher, based on whether there's someone close by or not. If opponents are far away, he'll fire off a power geyser, creating 3 massive energy explosions along the ground. But if some poor sap is right next to him, Terry will unleash his signature Buster Wolf and send them flying. As far as overall playstyle goes, Terry's probably going to fight in similar fashion to his games of origin, just in a slightly different way to account for Smash being a very different environment. A mid to close range fighter, Terry will lean heavily on his powerful spacing tools and strong punishes. With mostly just okay frame data, he lacks the ability to press buttons in his opponent's faces and overwhelm them the way Ryu and Ken can, so he won't be as geared toward rushdown. But what he lacks in close-up pressure, he makes up for in his ability to close the distance, with multiple burst options and zone-breaking tools to make him much harder in comparison to camp out. His moves in his games tend to hit hard, so he'll have great damage output and an alright time closing stocks, but he also tends to have a lot of end lag, particularly on his specials. If you're worried about having to deal with them, I think a safe bet's going to be to bait his attacks out and punish them. Any further details will depend on creative decisions that we don't know about yet. Stuff like what his base stats are like, if he's got the rigid fighting game air movement or not, how or if max mode is implemented, etc. We'll see how close I get to the real thing in a few weeks. My rundown of Banjo and Kazooie ended up fairly accurate for the clips we saw, but missed the mark on predicting the moves we didn't see, so who knows how this will end up, right? Overall, Terry Bogard was an unexpected inclusion, but among the ever-growing array of fighters we have, including 2 fighting game characters already, he's sure to fit right in. With so little concrete info to work with, we've been left speculating what he'll do. You should see all the alternate guesses I ended up scrapping. Power Geyser as his forward or down smash, Rising Tackle as his up air with Power Dunk as his up special, Crack Shoot as his down special with more vertical movement on it, with Power Dunk as his down air and his grounded blowback move as his forward smash. The list goes on. And we still don't know exactly what content he'll bring with him, both spirits and that home stage we caught a brief glimpse of. Wonder what they'll do to have it stand out. Maybe let you jump between the foreground and background like in a couple Fatal Fury titles? Okay, maybe that's a little much. With one more spot left in the pass and an unknown number of newcomers afterward, we're left in the dark on who'll get an invite next. Hopefully the rest of DLC, however long it goes, gives us a varied enough mix of characters to leave everyone in the community feeling included somehow. I know, it's a tall order, but hey, wishful thinking, right? Special thanks to these people here for helping make this video happen. Extra special thanks to my patrons for their support. If you're interested in becoming one yourself, check out the link down in the description for more details. And so, until next time, we wait until sometime in November to learn more. But when will it be? What will it learn? And will there be any more reveals with it yet? For now, the future is uncertain.